Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to our Smart Application webinar, Let's Hit Submit. My name is Greg and I will be the moderator for this afternoon's session. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce our two speakers that we have on the line joining us this afternoon. First, we have Dr. Brandon Kokenauer. He's our Smart Deputy Program Manager. Prior to this role, Dr. Kokenauer spent 16 years as a researcher at the Naval Air Warfare Center, Aircraft Division in Patuxent River, Maryland, developing laser systems for remote sensing, imaging, and communication in the ocean. He will be joined by Ms. Dima Kalnin. Dima is on our Smart Administrative Support team. She's provided administrative support to the SMART program for over 4 years now, and she's worked in multiple positions across support teams and is currently serving as our Deputy Outreach Team Lead. A few administrative notes before we dive into the formal presentation this afternoon. If you're using a phone line, make sure your audio is linked. Don't worry if you get dropped from the Zoom call, just simply dial back in. Please understand that you're muted upon entry and there are no chat capabilities. Please direct all of your questions into the Q&A box, and that's the Q&A feature that you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom dialog window there. We will have a robust Q&A session here this afternoon. We will do our absolute best to get to every single one of the questions that are asked this afternoon. However, if we don't have an opportunity to answer your particular question, or even if you'd like to do a follow-up, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time via email, and that is smart@smartscholarship.org. This webinar is being recorded. I'll say that again, this webinar is being recorded, and we will have it available on our website, smartscholarship.org, within roughly a week after the end of this afternoon's webinar. Yep. All right, without further ado, I would like to now pass it over to Dr. Brandon Kokenauer. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Welcome everyone to our Let's Hit Submit webinar. Great to see so many of you back. I'm sure many of you in the audience joined us in August for our kickoff webinar, and then again last month for our Fostering a Community of Diversity webinar. This webinar is focused on our application and specifically as we head towards the end of our application cycle for the 2022 cohort, providing some the best practices and opportunity for you to ask questions about the application, about the program in general as you all finish and get ready to hit submit on your own applications. Just real quick to start off in understanding how the SMART program fits within the overall DoD mission and the DoD STEM initiative. The graphic here shows just a bit about the entire DoD STEM ecosystem that starts all the way through elementary school, through K-12, undergraduate education, and then all the way through graduate and PhDs. And really the department recognizes the need to support those pursuing or who wish to pursue a degree in STEM at all ages. The SMART program being one of those efforts. So just to give you an idea of how SMART fits into the larger overall picture of the DoD STEM environment and initiative. Okay, next slide. So before we get into specifics of the application, I want to talk just a little bit on what is SMART and give a brief overview for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, or perhaps maybe just heard about us during a webinar at your university this fall during our university engagement tour. So SMART is a scholarships for service program sponsored by the Department of Defense, meant to recruit the next generation of science and technology students to become science and technology professionals within the department. Next slide. What do we offer? So we are a scholarship for service program. So that scholarship includes full tuition. It also includes an annual stipend, depending on the degree level that you're pursuing. Internships with a DoD laboratory or agency during the summer, and then guaranteed employment after you complete that degree at that DoD laboratory or agency. In order to be eligible, you must be a U.S. citizen pursuing a degree in STEM in one of our 21 STEM disciplines. SMART awards anywhere from 1 to 5 years of funding for your degree. You must be able to obtain a security clearance, complete an internship, and then accept DoD employment, again, once you've completed that degree. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the application. And for that, I'm joined by Dima Callan. Dima has been with the program a long time, as Greg mentioned, in a bunch of different roles, is very well-versed in all aspects of the program, and is our resident application guru. So she's going to take you through some tips and tricks about the application portal itself. Dima, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. So as a reminder, the application opened on August 1st, and the deadline to apply is on December 1st, which is just around the corner. So if you go to the next slide, we'll go through how to start that process. So for those of you who have already started your application, this will be a reminder. But for those of you who haven't applied yet, this is a great time to get started. You'll go to our website, smartscholarship.org, and you'll first want to register in order to create an account. So on this registration page, you'll see a reminder of those eligibility requirements, some of which that we went over briefly, and then the benefits listed on the right-hand side as well. And this first step to actually begin your application is how you'll create your account. So you'll fill this page out. It checks for eligibility, basic eligibility requirements. So looking to make sure that your GPA is a 3.0, looking to make sure that you've checked off all of those acknowledgments, that you're willing to work for the DoD after graduation and able to perform an internship if your award is more than 1 year. And so once you fill this page out, you'll get an email so that you can start your full application. So if you go to the next slide, this is what you'll see once you actually access the application portal. So again, some of you may have already seen this if you've started an application. So I'll just go through a couple of these sections really briefly. You'll see, first of all, that there are icons on each section, which is an important note that we'll notice in the next slide in a bit. But to begin, on the left-hand column, you'll see the first 3 boxes are really just checking that you acknowledge the Privacy Act, that you've reviewed the application instructions, and then that you've viewed some of our program materials. So that program materials actually gives you access to all of our application tips and resources on our website. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have those links listed for you as well. The About Me section is just your basic contact information. And then the real meat of the application is in the right-hand side 4 icons. So proposed award details, that's where you'll let us know what degree you're seeking funding for next fall. You'll also include your top 3 facility preferences as well in that section. So you're required a minimum of 3 preferences and a maximum of 5. And you can also select preferences based on geographic location if that's what you're interested in as well. For the personal statement, it is 1 long essay for all applicants. There are a few questions that are general questions that all applicants must answer regardless of whether they're undergrad or graduate level. And then there are additional questions in there for those pursuing graduate degrees and for those who are retention scholars. And so retention scholars are individuals who currently work for the DoD and are looking to go back and pursue higher education. So just wanted to clarify with that personal statement that even though there are different questions for, it's additional questions, sorry, for graduate students or retention, the character limit is the same. So you're writing the same length essay, you just have a little bit more detail about your research or your work, depending on what your status is. And then my experiences, that's really your academic background information, professional history experiences. So you want to upload your transcripts, your resume, and then include any awards, honors, or anything like that that you want to include, or any volunteer work into your application. For anyone on the line that is a freshman, we understand that you won't have your fall college transcripts available just yet. So for your situation, on the registration page, you'll put your high school GPA, and then when you upload your transcripts, you'll upload your high school transcript. And then at the end of your semester, once you submit your application, we will reach out to all freshmen to make sure that we're collecting those fall transcripts as well. And then the last section is the references section. So for that, you'll need a minimum of 2 letters of recommendation, and you can put up to 5, but I believe only 3 will be evaluated in your application. So for the references, your responsibility is to just contact them and put their contact information in the actual application. And then it's up to them to upload the letters, which will automatically go into your application. So if you go to the next slide, this is an example of someone who's basically done with their application. The only thing that they're waiting on are those letters of recommendation. So as you'll notice, every icon has now switched to a checkbox except for references. That means that while the applicant has uploaded or put in the contact information for their references, they're still waiting on those letters. However, those applicants can still submit their application. So at this point, you can submit your application if the only thing you're waiting on are the references. After you submit your application, there are only 2 sections that you can make edits to, and that's your basic contact information and the About Me. So if you want to change your address or your phone number, and then you can always add references after you submit as well. Let's say you put in contact information for 2 people, but one person isn't getting back to you and you want to add a third. You can do that after you submit your application. So once you submit your application, if you're still waiting on those references, you'll notice that your status will change from in progress to submitted. Once you've submitted and you have all requirements and all your letters of recommendation, then your application status will change to completed. And so just so that we're monitoring that only completed applications will be evaluated. So it's really important that you reach out in time, you collect all the necessary information, you're hitting the submit button, and you're contacting your references so that they can upload those letters of recommendation on time. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you an idea of what's to come after you submit your application. So as I mentioned, right now is the application window from August through December. Once that deadline passes, all completed applications will be evaluated by a panel of academia and DoD personnel. They will rank the top 50 to 60% of all STEM disciplines, and will then offer notifications of semifinalist status. So those semifinalists will then be put into a pool of the selections, which occur between February and March. And those applications, those semifinalist applications, will be evaluated by our SF personnel, so the sponsoring facilities, basically. And it's ultimately the sponsoring facilities that will make award selection. So during that time frame, it's really important that you do keep your contact information up to date in the application, because some facilities may reach out by email or by phone to gather more information, potentially do interviews during that time frame as well. And then in April, final selections are made and award notifications go out. And then between May and June, if you choose to accept the award, you have the opportunity to go on a 1 to 2 day site visit and visit the sponsoring facility, get to know your supervisor, your team, and really explore what life at the facility will be like. So now I will actually pass it over, I believe the next slide, to Brandon, so he can go over some application tips and how you can really strengthen your application.
Thanks, Dima. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what are usually the three areas that we typically get the most questions about and can hang applicants up the most. The first is the personal statement. So if you go into the portal, or if you've been there already, I'll just read a little bit about the prompt for your personal statement. It says, please explain the following: your educational and professional goals, the factors and experiences that led you to choose your field of study, how you believe you would benefit from working as a part of the DoD civilian workforce, and then how your experience, interests, and goals will further the DoD mission. And then some extra requirements for graduate students. We encourage you to elaborate a bit on the research that you've been involved with thus far, or that you expect to do as a graduate student. And tell us a little bit about why you think or how you think that research would be relevant to a DoD mission or a DoD technical area. So really what we're getting at, or we're trying to elicit you all to think about, is not just telling us how great an opportunity that getting the scholarship would be, right? So I talked at the very beginning about some of the benefits, right? Free tuition, a great stipend, some stipends or allotments for health insurance and books, summer internships, guaranteed employment. That's all great. We can all agree on that. What we're trying to get applicants to think about when they apply through their personal statement is why this program is good for you, right? What is it about technical work within the Department of Defense that is interesting to you? What are your technical and professional goals so far as a student? As far as you can see, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? How might that align with something that the department wants to do or is interested in? So really think about kind of personalizing the opportunity, not just that it's really attractive and it's a great financial, reduce the financial burden of going to school, or that you feel really patriotic and want to give back to your country. You can safely assume that everyone who applies kind of comes from that same place. What we're looking to ask for you is that more personal story, right? And how can you tie that to the DoD mission, and in a way that allows a reviewer or a selector, a sponsoring facility who ultimately selects scholars, to say, you know what, they get it, they understand maybe either the DoD mission broadly or a specific mission at my sponsoring facility or lab. And I think based on their interests and their passions, they would make a really good fit here. So that's a little bit about the personal statement. Dima talked a bit about references, letter of references. This is another area that can trip up applicants a bit. So who makes a good reference? Really, what we're looking for here is someone who's interacted with you in a professional environment, and specifically, or even better, a technical professional environment. So for some of you, particularly undergraduates, that might mean teachers and professors, right? So if you're a freshman now applying for your sophomore year, maybe you've been able to make some relationships, have some relationships with a professor through a laboratory course that you've got to know them. Maybe not. Maybe you're still early in your degree pursuit that you haven't formed those relationships, in which case perhaps a teacher from high school, maybe a mentor from say a robotics club or something, some extracurricular that you participated in as a high school student, that would be able to kind of speak to your potential, your leadership skills, your ability to contribute as part of a team. As you get further on, maybe you're an upperclassman undergraduate, or you're a graduate student, you might have academic advisors or professors that you've taken a few classes with, or a research advisor who you have a little bit more of a rapport with, who will be able to speak about not just your sort of academic performance in the classroom, but also outside the classroom, maybe in the lab, maybe working in teams, with group design projects, things like that. If you've done internships before, we would love to hear from mentors or supervisors from your internships. They've certainly interacted and engaged with you in a professional and potentially technical capacity. If you've done a DoD internship before, the NREIP program, CAP, the DoD HBCU MI internship program, any internship program that would have had you at a DoD lab for a summer. We would love to hear from your supervisor or mentors there. They've interacted with you doing DoD work, so definitely a great person to ask a reference or a letter of reference from. As Dima mentioned, that's all done through the application system. So you are not necessarily the one that are uploading those references, but it's the person that you've recommended. So you can complete your application, go and input the contact information for the references that you're requesting references from, and then continue to follow up with those folks while over this next month to ensure that those letters make it into the portal. In fact, if you haven't already, I would highly suggest going out and talking to those folks. Right, if you've identified a supervisor or a professor that you think might make a good letter of recommendation, go talk to them. Send them the link to the SMART website. Tell them what the program is all about. Tell them why you think you want to apply for it. Give them some context by which to understand your motivation for applying to the program. And then after you've had that conversation, then go into the portal, send them the link, put their contact information, and send them the link, and then continue to follow up with them in the coming weeks as we head to December 1st. Finally, facility preferences. We've done a lot of work this year in revamping the website to help you, the applicant, understand the individual missions of all of our participating sponsoring facilities. So if you go to the website, I'm sure many of you have already been there, you can go and kind of do your Amazon shopping for sponsoring facilities. You can filter based on the kind of work that you think you're interested in. Maybe if you're a PhD applicant, you're looking for facilities that are doing research and engineering. Maybe if you're an undergrad, you're really looking to work at doing fleet support, or at a depot, being hands-on with an aircraft or a ship or a sensor system that's currently out in a warfighter's hands right now. Maybe you're interested more in defense intelligence or acquisition, bringing your technical expertise to how the DoD procures the next generation of systems. So there's lots of different ways for you to kind of suss out the different missions of each sponsoring facility, what they do, the type of scholars that they've selected in the past, the disciplines that they typically select, All of that data is there for you. There's also links, in addition to some narrative on each sponsoring facility provided by that sponsoring facility. There are links where you can go to their website to learn a little bit more. As Dima mentioned, you can select up to 5 preferences, as well as a geographic location. So if maybe you don't necessarily have a preference, but you know that you really want to stay within the the Northeast. In addition to listing some of your preferred sponsoring facilities, you can also list a geographic preference so that all of our sponsoring facilities can be able to see maybe where they might overlap with some of your interests, at least geographically. Okay. So I'm sure there are going to be more questions on that and some more to say, but we'll save that for the Q&A. Greg, let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so if you're not already following us on social media, please do so, especially over this next couple weeks, because there will be lots more reminders and tips and tricks as we head into the December 1st deadline for the application portal. We've got a couple Q&A sessions on Instagram coming up, one just in a couple days on the 12th, another on the 26th, and then another final one on the 30th, right before the portal closes. And so if you have some last minute questions, we've got our team, Dima included, who will be on the other end helping to answer some of those questions. If there are any faculty advisors or DoD science and technology employees on the line and you're interested in becoming an evaluator, please go to the website, smartscholarship.org. You'll find up at the top to be able to register as an evaluator. That window closes coming up soon here on the 13th. We'd love to have you involved. And with that, I think we are ready to do some Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Kokenauer and Dima. Give me just a moment to pull up the first question here in the Q&A box. Okay. So first question that we have here says, can you speak a bit on non-traditional applicants? For example, working professionals looking to return for a graduate degree. Are there age restrictions?
So the short answer is no. So you don't necessarily have to be currently enrolled in a program to apply. If you have completed your bachelor's degree, you went to work, and now you're thinking of returning to get a graduate degree and you're a bit older, that's great. Submit an application. And we'd love to consider your application. So there's definitely no age restriction. There are other folks who will often apply. Maybe they've gotten an associate's degree. They took a few bachelor's courses, maybe didn't complete their degree. That's okay too. There are, I think Dima will speak to in a little bit, some more specifics on transcripts and what some of those requirements are as you complete your degree, but definitely don't let that be an impediment to you submitting an application.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Follow-up question here. This looks like a great question for Dima. So question says, what transcripts should I provide if I've been out of school for several years or attended several institutions?
So you'll just want to upload your most recent. So if you completed your bachelor's maybe 5 years ago, you'll just want to reach back out to the university and collect those transcripts. If you have multiple degrees or multiple transcripts, we're just looking for the most recent so that we can check that 3.0 GPA.
Thanks, Dima. This looks like a good follow-up for Dr. Kokenauer here. What about, so the participant asks, what about 2-year degrees? and then second question, can I apply if I'm currently pursuing a 2-year associate's degree?
Yes. So SMART actually does fund associate's degree, though we haven't funded many of them, only because the sponsoring facilities are ultimately the ones that are making those selections. Occasionally, it does happen where they're looking for someone with an associate's degree, but most often it's someone who's pursuing an associate's degree who then wants to jump into a bachelor's degree when they're done. So usually that entry point is kind of that like an equivalent sophomore or junior year. So what applicants or awardees will do, they'll be at their pursuing their associate's degree, and maybe it's a program where the associate's degree then leads right into a bachelor's degree at a particular institution. Maybe they're applying to a different institution to complete that bachelor's degree, but you would be applying for a bachelor's degree even though you're currently pursuing your associate's.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen on the line, have no fear. We are going to be here for at least another 45 minutes or so. So a lot of time here for remaining questions. Just wanted to put that out there. We're going to stay on well past 2 p.m. Eastern time this afternoon. So next question that we have asks, states, can you talk more about how best to choose my top 5 sponsoring facilities?
Sure. So as I mentioned, the website is a great first step. Look at the different ways that you can filter based on the type of work that the sponsoring facility does, maybe the type of STEM degree that they've awarded to or are looking for, maybe based on geographic location, maybe it's based on component. Maybe you just really are into, I don't know, maybe you're an oceanographer, right? And so you probably are looking at maybe some of the Navy labs rather than the Air Force facilities, right? So there are lots of different ways to kind of slice and dice that. Then go and do some research. In addition to what we provide on the website, go to the facilities website. Look at what they're doing, the type of work that they're doing, go to their social media pages, read some of the highlights and the news that the facilities are putting out on their own about the type of work that they do, or some of the scientists and engineers and the workforce there, the things that they're doing. And that will kind of give you a feel for the kind of work that they're doing. Maybe you consult a mentor or a professor, depending on the type of work that professor or mentor does. Maybe if you're a graduate student, you've got or even not even a graduate student, even if you're an undergraduate student, your advisor might be involved in research and have an understanding of maybe some certain DoD labs that are doing particular work that you might be interested in. So there are lots of different ways to kind of go about digging a little bit deeper. We give you a pretty good start on the SMART website, and then empower you to go and find some additional resources.
Thank you, sir. I found a really nice follow-up question here on that same thread. If I'm not accepted by one of my top 5 choices, am I still eligible to be selected by other facilities?
Mm-hmm. Dima, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So even if you have specific facilities listed as your top preferences, just keep in mind that all facilities will be looking at your application. So there's still that opportunity that you'll be selected by a facility that you didn't necessarily put on your application, but that matches some of your future goals or academic experience.
Okay, thanks, Dima. Here's a follow-up here's another question for you specifically. So the participant mentions that they're finishing their Bachelor's of Science in the spring of 2022, and planning to begin a graduate degree in the fall of 2022. They mentioned they do not yet know what the school they will attend is. Does that impact eligibility?
No, not at all. So we do have an option for applicants who are interested in starting a graduate degree next fall. In the application for academic institution, you'll just select undecided for the time being, or if you did have an idea of an option of a school that you're interested in attending, you can include that as well. And then if you're offered an award, at that time, you'll be able to confirm with us what the university is that you've decided on. If you are undecided in your application, and you're offered an award, we will reach out to get clarification to see where you are accepted or where you'll be enrolling in the fall. So now is definitely the chance or the time for you to apply for any graduate programs that you're thinking of starting next fall. And that's definitely not an issue at all.
Thanks. Here is a few questions for Dr. Kokenauer. As a future graduate student, I don't yet know what my research topic will be. Does this impact my eligibility? I'll continue. Likewise, my exact graduation date from grad school is hard to determine exactly. Is it better to apply for an additional year of funding? And will I be able to extend my award if necessary?
Yeah, so both good questions. The short answer for the first one, do I need to know exactly what my research is going to be, or even what school I'm going to attend to do my graduate degree? And the answer is no. At least for the institution, you can apply not knowing what your institution might be, but we do ask that by the time you are awarded in the spring or before, you start being a scholar in August of next summer, that you have decided on an institution. And usually that kind of lines up with when institutions are making their final decisions on applications, their own applications. So that timing works out. So you don't necessarily need to know, I'm a undergraduate senior and I want to get a master's or a PhD in, I'm an aerospace engineer and I'm into hypersonics, but I don't really know exactly what yet. That's okay. Your personal statement should reasonably kind of articulate some of the things that you're interested in and would be curious about learning more about, but you don't necessarily need to come with your dissertation topic ready to go, right? That's certainly not necessary. The second thing that's always tricky is, you haven't even started graduate school yet. Do I really know that I'm going to be able to finish this in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? How does that work? So, we ask students or applicants to make the best judgment that they can. Talk to, if you're already enrolled, have some discussions with your advisors to get a plan with, start laying out what your timeline for graduation might be. If you're unsure yet, maybe you apply for the maximum of all 5 years. And if you end up having to graduate early, that's great. There are methods to increase or decrease your award length under certain conditions, like I finished my dissertation early and I can graduate and come, start my service commitment right away. So those opportunities are available once you're awarded.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next question that we have, this looks like a good one for Dima. My grades for fall of 2021 semester won't be published until after the application deadline. What transcript should I provide?
So I am assuming this is someone who's a freshman. So in that situation, you would want to put your high school transcripts into the application. And then at the end of your fall term, after you've submitted your application, we'll reach back out to all freshmen to collect those fall 2022 or 2021 transcripts.
Excellent. So we have a few questions around the essay in general. So I was hoping maybe one of you could elaborate a little bit more about the essay, maybe some tips or pointers there on the application, please.
One of the things that I saw in the Q&A, at least for graduate students, is we in the portal, the response must be between like 3,500 and 7,000 characters, and there's the extra requirement for graduate students to elaborate on the research aspect, and some questions on how do you balance those two things, and really. I don't know if I'd necessarily consider them two different requirements, but something that you want to fold into the other bullets that are in the prompt. So the educational goals, professional goals, the factors that led you to where you are now, how you think you'll benefit by being a DoD civilian, and how your interests align to the DoD mission. Being able to weave your own research goals or achievements, if you have them as a graduate student, into that narrative, I think is really what that is trying to prompt. There was another question, is this supposed to be like a survey of my research area or a personal statement? We're not looking for a technical document that would conceivably go into a journal or something like that. When we talk about being able to discuss your research interests with some kind of scientific detail, we simply mean there are going to be DoD scientists or folks from academia who are experts in electrical engineering, computer science, cyber, AI, hypersonics, whatever it is, that you shouldn't hesitate to be able to speak to them, like they also kind of understand the areas that you're interested in. So it's not a technical paper that we're looking for, but encouraging you to weave your technical know-how and expertise and interests into your personal statement. Okay. This is a very interesting question. Dr. Kokenauer, I believe this one is in your field. This would be a good question for you. What is the proportion of awards made to undergrads versus graduate students? And then is there competition between the two? Yeah, so as it turns out, typically about half of the awards made each year go to students pursuing a bachelor's degree. The other half go to graduate students. And of those half of graduate students, it's also about 25% are masters, another 25% are PhD. So it's not necessarily skewed one way or the other. You also, in the evaluation period, are being evaluated relative to other bachelor students or other graduate students. So don't think as a freshman, freshman biomedical engineer, you're being compared to someone who's in the second year of a PhD in biomedical engineering. They're separate sandboxes. So you're only being evaluated relative to the same STEM degree and the same type of degree, level of degree, bachelor's, master's, or PhD. The second part of that is once the evaluation period is over, as Dima mentioned, and semifinalists are announced, those semifinalists, that list goes out to all of the DoD sponsoring facilities. And then it's the sponsoring facilities that are actually the ones that decide who it is they want to sponsor, right? And so there is an aspect of facility need that comes down to it, in addition to just your application, your quality of application overall. So there might be a facility that really needs computer scientists. There might be another facility that's really looking for biomedical or folks in the biosciences or cognitive and neuroengineering. It just depends on what that facility is looking for. Maybe they want bachelor students because of the nature of work that they do. Some facilities will select exclusively bachelor students. Other facilities will select exclusively PhDs because of the work that they're doing. And other facilities will select a mixture of the two because the nature of their work is so broad. So there are really sort of two different things that kind of factor into ultimately how the cohort is shaped.
Great, thank you. Next question that we have is from Christian. Christian asks, I'm currently an undergraduate, states and then asks a few questions. I'm currently an undergraduate senior applying to PhD programs for which I'm seeking funding. I was wondering, do I count as a graduate applicant or an undergraduate applicant? I'm curious if I would be required to submit GRE scores, since I know this is required for graduate applicants, but not undergraduate applicants. I believe this would also change the requirements for my personal statement. Let me read that quickly again. I'm currently an undergraduate senior applying to PhD programs for which I'm seeking funding. I was wondering, do I count as a graduate applicant or undergraduate applicant? I'm curious if I would be required to submit GRE scores, since I know this is required for graduate applicants, but not for undergraduate applicants. I believe this would also change the requirements for my personal statement.
So Dima, I think I heard two questions in there. I'm an undergraduate applying to grad school. Am I applying as an undergrad or a graduate?
They would be applying as a graduate student because that is the award that you're seeking funding for.
Right. And then the second question is about test scores. Do you want to talk about test scores broadly?
Sure. So there is no test score requirement. So whether you're undergrad or graduate level student, you do not have to submit test scores. So you don't have to worry about the GRE or the SAT.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, team. Next question we have here is, let's say the award is for 3 years. Would the person awarded need to do an internship per summer, one for each summer in between, or just one during the 3 years?
Yeah, so great question. And I also maybe want to take that opportunity to emphasize, in case I didn't earlier, or I assume that many of you have already been familiar with some of the requirements of the program. For every year that SMART funds, the service commitment to the DoD is 1-to-1. So if you had a 3-year award, then your employment commitment after your degree was done would be 3 years. During the 3 years that you are pursuing your degree, you would do a internship every summer. The exception would be when you graduate. If you graduate, you get to the end of 3 years in May, you graduate in May. You typically wouldn't do an internship that summer because instead you'd be in the process of being hired as an employee. There are some rare instances where a student will graduate, then do an internship and then be hired, but those are pretty rare instances. So to answer the initial question, yes, you would do an internship all years of your award. I should also add, and I think I've seen some questions about this too, regarding the impacts of COVID to the program. The 2 years ago, 2020, we did waive the internship requirement. Sorry, 2020. Sorry, I'm losing track of dates here. 2020, we did waive the internship requirement due to COVID-19. This past summer in 2021, scholars had the option to either do an in-person internship or virtual internship. We have not made any decisions yet on the summer of 2022, but for applicants applying now, their first internship conceivably wouldn't be until the summer of 2023.
Thanks. So I am seeing quite a few questions around references here in the Q&A. So Dima, I was hoping you could go ahead and repeat the requirements and then explain how it works in the application portal. In other words, how the references are requested.
Yeah, sure. So you need a minimum of 2 reference letters uploaded to your application, and you can put contact information for up to 5 reference providers. So as an applicant, what you'll do in that section is you'll need to put in the reference provider's full name, the relationship that you have with them, whether they're your mentor, your teacher, or a former supervisor, and then their email address. Once you save that information, if you have 3 reference provider information, for example, you can rank them. So if you want to rank from 1 to 5 in order of what you would want a reviewer to see, you have the opportunity to do that. And then there's a button that will appear that says send email. So once you click on that button, an email will automatically go to that reference provider whose email address that you put into the system, and they'll get an email with instructions on how to upload that letter. I did see a question in there. Someone asked if after you submit your application, you can also resend that email. And the answer is yes. After you initially click on that send email button, you'll see the option to resend, and you can do that even after you've submitted the application. So I know I mentioned this earlier, but once you submit your application, if you're still waiting for letters of recommendation, you can make edits to certain parts of that section. If you wanted to update an email address, for example, you would need to delete the entry and put in a new one, which you can do even after you submit the application. And if you want to resend the email, you can do that as well. So just keeping that in mind.
Okay, thanks, Dima. Next question we have is from Liz. If you have any publications under review for publishment by a STEM journal, should they be listed in the resume, even though they are still in the review process?
Yeah, I think there is a section in our application for publications, awards, et cetera, et cetera. If you've got something submitted, put it in there. Absolutely. It doesn't necessarily have to be accepted yet. You could think of it as a line on your CV or your resume that says, this is the title, this is the author, submitted to whatever journal in submission. And then certainly, obviously put that on your resume as well. But definitely make sure that gets included into the fields for publications and awards. Dima, do you have something to add there?
No, that was about it. But I did, we get this question a lot, and we might have gotten it today as well for that specific section. But when it comes to my experiences section for publications or volunteer work or community service, you don't need to go too far back in time. If you're a freshman, it would make sense if you put in some awards or honors that you received in high school. But, just think back to the most recent or the ones that stick out the most. You don't have to put in something that, an award or community service that you did maybe when you were in middle school or anything like that. But just, think back to what is most relevant. And if you're in college, we're mostly looking for college experience, but that doesn't really exclude if you want to include any experiences from high school or anything that you've done during that time frame.
Thank you. Moving along. The next question mentions, if an applicant applies while they're in their bachelor's pursuit, but after being awarded the scholarship, Smart Scholarship, enrolls in a master's program while doing the bachelor's, called Fast Track, would the stipend increase? Let me know if you'd like me to read that again.
I think I got the gist. So the program's recognized over the past couple of years that these accelerated 4+1 to master's degrees or joint bachelor's, master's programs are becoming more popular. So we've made it a lot easier for students to pursue and participate in those programs. So maybe you're a freshman now, and you want to apply. You're going to do one of these accelerated programs that's in your university, and you haven't applied necessarily yet. You're not to that place, but that's what you want to do. You could apply for a joint bachelor's, master's degree, and once you are able to make that application, you don't have to do anything to the program, because your terminal degree with SMART is for a master's. It's a joint bachelor's and master's degree. There was a question in there about, does the stipend change? Once your bachelor's degree is conferred and you move to the master's portion of your degree, yes, your stipend would change. There are some students who will apply for a bachelor's degree and then decide, oh man, I'd really like to go get a master's degree, whether it's through an accelerated program or just a normal, 2-year master's program, either at their school or at a different school. We've made it easy for scholars to apply for basically a sort of an add-on award without having to reapply. So if you're a bachelor's student, you want to pursue a master's degree, you would submit a request to amend your service agreement that would change both your degree pursuit and the length of time that you would be funded, and hence your service commitment, right? So if you extend your degree pursuit by a year or two, your service commitment would extend by a year or two as well. And so long as your facility can support that degree and that time, then that can be approved. So if you're a electrical engineering bachelor's student and you want to get a master's degree in electrical engineering too, and you're sponsoring facilities on board with that, great, super easy. If you're an electrical engineering student and you want to get your master's degree in biosciences, well, maybe that doesn't necessarily fit within the mission of your sponsoring facility anymore, right? Because they made the selection anticipating you being an electrical engineer when you finish your degree. And so that's where a lot of conversation, continued conversation between you and your sponsoring facility and your mentors and supervisors there during your internship period, as you're sort of formulating and you're recognizing some of the other opportunities that are available to you, have those conversations to ensure that your academic pathway still is in line with that of the sponsoring facility. The only thing that we don't allow an easy adjustment for is bachelor's to PhD, just because that's such a significant commitment. However, we do have what we call follow-on awards, where if you were awarded for a bachelor's degree and then wanted to pursue a PhD, you could reapply to the program again, only this time as a graduate student, to have SMART fund your PhD.
Okay, next question. How many recipients get selected per year?
On average, the acceptance rate the past couple of years has been around 15%, give or take a few percent. Dima?
Yeah, that sounds about right. We also have that information on our website if anyone's interested in looking at award stats, and you can kind of toggle between disciplines and award years. And that's on, if you click on resources, you'll see award stats on there. And you can see from the past 3 years what that looks like as well.
Last year, there were about 2,400 completed applications, and we made 416 awards.
Mm-hmm.
10 points, gold star for anyone who can do that math real quick.
All right. So next question from Bremer. He asks, are we able to double major while in this program?
So that's a bit of a loaded question because it comes with a lot of different unique caveats. But if it is something that a sponsoring facility is, fits within their mission, right? And you're a double major in electrical engineering and physics, right? I'm just trying to think of something that might be common. That's happened before, right? So that could reasonably be something that the sponsoring facility says, yeah, that we would love that kind of expertise. So I hope that answered the question. If there is a specific, unique circumstance that you have, I would encourage you to email the program, smart@smartscholarship.org to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. And just a reminder, folks, we are staying on the line. We've got about 15, 20 minutes or so remaining of questions. So please try to stick around. We'll get to as many more as possible here in the next 15, 20 minutes or so. So next question that we have here, individual mentions that they got married during this process and then says, so my application, give me a moment. The Q&A just bounced a little bit, so dropped. Okay, so they got married during the process. Application name is my maiden name. Is there any way to change that, or does that not matter? All application attachments include my new married name.
Go ahead, Dima.
Yeah, you can update your name in the application in the About Me section. Even if you've already submitted your application, that's something that you can edit. So yeah, go for it.
Thanks. All right, next question from Mohammed. What happens if you get selected but cannot start the internship until early June due to a school conflict?
Yeah, good question. So starting in sort of late winter, early spring, you and your sponsoring facility in the program will start talking about summer internships. So long as you're able to, fulfill that 8 to 10 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, that's really up to you and the sponsoring facility to kind of work out the timing line. So everybody's academic calendar is a little bit different. On rare occasions, we will have scholars who perform internships at some point other than the summer. Doesn't happen often, but everyone sometimes has unique circumstances with the way their schools are scheduled. So that is certainly within the realm of possibility.
Great, thank you. Give me just a moment. I'm scrolling through a couple.
Actually, while you're looking for the next question, Greg, I wanted to go back to the references. I saw a few questions about if you can submit reference letters after the deadline, and the answer is no. Everything in your application packet must be submitted by December 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then I think there was a question in there about how long the letter of recommendation needs to be. Typically, those are just one page. I don't think we have a specific requirement as far as length, but typically the letters of recommendation are just about one page typed up, just for that clarification.
No, that's a great note. I appreciate that, Dima. All right. So next question that I have here asks, can you enter multiple geographic preferences? For example, the Northeast and Northwest?
Go ahead, Dima.
Yes, you can. So there are, I believe, 4 different options on the application, and it's the same thing with the facility preferences. So you can submit between 3 and 5 geographical preferences on the application as well, or just one if you have one specific, but that is an optional field and you can submit up to 5 different options.
Thank you. We have a question from what appears to be a DoD employee / retention applicant. This individual asks, is there any reason that I would not end up sponsored by my current division?
So that's I don't want to say entirely up to you, but a big portion of that is up to you. So I always encourage retention applicants to be engaging in some really significant conversations with their sponsoring facilities now while they're applying. The worst thing that you can do is apply for SMART in a bubble and not let anybody know at your facility, what your intentions are. The best way to be successful as a retention scholar is to have great coordination and great support from your local sponsoring facility. So start talking to your sort of local mentors and supervisors. Find out who your smart sponsoring facility POC is at your lab or agency. Get as many people as possible who would have visibility over your work to be on board with your decision to apply for the program and go back to school full time. And the best that you're able to do that, the easier it'll be down the road. That way, when it comes time for selections, reasonably somebody knows that if one of their employees has applied to the program and can be selected. But you've got to have those conversations ahead of time, and it'll pay off dividends later on down the road.
Thank you. Next question looks like this is something for Dima, and forgive me if you've already answered this particular aspect, but a reminder couldn't hurt here. Where is the link the applicant sends to their reference for them to turn in their letter of recommendation?
Sure. So that is in the application. If you've already started one, there's a section for references. And as soon as you enter a new reference provider, and once you put in their contact information and save, you'll see that send email button. And that's how the reference gets the email from the program.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Should all semifinalists expect to be interviewed if selected?
So let me rephrase that question. Not all semifinalists will be interviewed. Semifinalists, so maybe we'll back up again and kind of walk through the process again. That semifinalist list goes out to all of the sponsoring facilities. Sponsoring facilities can then go in and review applications and search for scholars and applicants that meet their workforce needs. When they identify potential selectees, they are encouraged to have phone interviews, right? Call up, have a discussion on your work, the work that the sponsoring facility does. Those sponsoring facilities then roll up priorities and their wish list of selections back up to the program, and then awards are made based on budget and everyone taking into account everyone's priorities of all sponsoring facilities. So being on the semifinals list does not necessarily guarantee a phone interview. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not guaranteed an award. You may be selected, get on somebody's list. Maybe it's not necessarily a sponsoring facility that you indicated, but you may end up on somebody's list as a selectee because they saw your application in the portal. So there's a lot of pathways. There isn't one single pathway to going from applicant to awardee, which I guess is really what I'm trying to articulate.
Thank you. This is a good question here from Jonathan. Do you encourage applicants to reach out to prospective sponsoring facilities?
Sure. Again, we empower you with as much information as possible on our sponsoring facilities on our website. And I mentioned some other ways in which you can learn about the mission, find folks involved in the type of work that you are potentially interested in from what you see there.
Great, thank you. Give me just a moment. Okay, we have a question here from Andrew. So give me a moment. Skip that. I was wondering if you were awarded the scholarship at one college and decide to transfer to another college, will you still keep the scholarship?
Generally, that answer is yes. That happens from time to time. Again, so long as your main degree pursuit isn't changing, right? So if you're an electrical engineer at one university, you're transferring to be an electrical engineer at another university, that's usually not an issue. If you're also, changing your major to something that isn't necessarily within your selecting sponsoring facility's mission, that could be problematic. But typically, changes of institutions themselves, as long as it's an accredited university, isn't usually an issue.
Okay. All right. Looks like next question we have is from Jaden. Can you apply if you're completing a certification and intend on transferring to a different to a different institution?
Dima can kind of follow up on me depending on her interpretation of that question, but I think that kind of fits within what I talked about earlier. If you're, say, pursuing an associate's degree, with the intention of applying for bachelor's programs by next fall, you would be applying for an award for a bachelor's degree that would, you would be accepted to, presumably, by sometime in the spring.
Okay. Apologies for the pause there. Wasn't sure if Dima was going to add in on that. All right. So for graduate student eligibility, do you need to have an undergraduate degree in STEM to qualify?
So your undergraduate degree was in a not STEM field, but your graduate degree is in a STEM field?
Yes.
Dima, what do you think there?
So typically that is allowed. I mean, as long as the degree that they're pursuing while they're with the SMART program is a STEM degree, then that's really what we're looking at. I know that we've seen applicants in the past who have multiple bachelor's degree, and they might have done, I don't know, maybe business as their first bachelor's, and then they go back to do engineering as their second bachelor's, and that's the new course that they're interested in taking. So as long as, again, the degree that you're looking to seek funding for with SMART is a STEM degree, then that you're eligible to apply.
Okay. Thank you both. Next question is from Joshua. Assuming you got the SMART scholarship, can you work while going to school, full or part-time, and still be eligible?
Yes. I'm going to be careful how I answer that, because there are some policies that are in flux, but the answer is yes, there is an opportunity for you if you want to pursue employment outside of your degree pursuit, so long as there isn't a conflict of interest with the funding that you're receiving from the DoD. So you cannot receive the SMART scholarship and then also be receiving federal dollars through some other type of employment or some other scholarship or fellowship that might also have a service commitment that would be in conflict of interest with the SMART service agreement. So those instances are usually pretty rare, though.
All right. Next question is from what appears to be another current duty employee. Funding would be MIPR. So they mentioned that the funding that they could see on the FAQ, that for a current DoD employee, funding would be MIPR'd to this particular individual's organization. So the question is, would I continue to be a federal employee with TSP, healthcare, other benefits, or converted to a contractor while in the SMART program?
No, so that's exactly the way that you are able to maintain your civilian employment while you're a SMART scholar. So SMART, instead of sending you your stipend, directly to your bank account, we send it through your sponsoring facility, and then your sponsoring facility sets up a line item or a chargeable object or line of accounting for you that you would charge in a similar way to your labor to in a similar way that you would a project. And so in doing so, you're able to, still stay on as at least a part-time employee. A lot of sponsoring facilities, and again, this is why I encourage folks to have some good conversations within their sponsoring facilities while applying. Will find ways to supplement the SMART stipend to make up the remainder of the employee's salary. So, for example, if you're getting a PhD, maybe half of your salary is covered by the SMART stipend, and then you might have internal funding or some other project funding within your sponsoring facility that's aligned to your dissertation topic that allows you to maintain your full salary as a DoD employee. But the short answer is no, you would not be a contractor.
All right, great. It looks like we have time for one last question here, but before I read that question, I would like to remind folks that this is being recorded. You could find it on our website, www.smartscholarship.org, here within the next week. And questions can be directed directly to smart@smartscholarship.org. Again, smartscholarship.org. Answer questions there very, very frequently. So the final question that we have is, how do we list dual majors on the application if applicable?
Seema, what are your thoughts?
I don't think that there's a way on the application to put dual majors. It's just that one text box. Well, you'll want to put, I guess, what you would consider is your predominant major. There is, I believe, there might be a section to put in a minor per se or a concentration, but double majors are a little bit tricky.
I would say though that if it's relevant and germane to your application, then maybe mentioning that in your personal statement and how your decision to pursue a dual major, what got you there and why you think that's important, and how you think that might be relevant for what you do next.
Fantastic. I actually, there's one other question that I have here that I would like to get to from Caroline. And Caroline asks, if I apply for the SMART Scholarship this year and don't get it, can I apply next year?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And the year after that, and the year after that, keep applying. Don't be discouraged if you're not selected your first time through. It's a competitive process. And again, even an excellent application is ultimately the sponsoring facilities are looking for certain unique subsets of skills. So just because you don't get selected doesn't necessarily mean that you had a poor application. Come back the next year. Definitely, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, we tried to get to as many questions as humanly possible here this afternoon during the time that we had allotted. If you have a question and it was not answered today, please, we have an entire team dedicated to helping to support with this application process. smart@smartscholarship.org. We've got a great website out there, smartscholarship.org. Lots of application tips, previous webinar videos as well that you can to go back to and reference, along with our entire application tips video series too, to be able to help guide you along. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help make this an overall smooth, relatively easy process for you as we move along. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it back over to Dr. Kokenauer or Dima if you all had any closing remarks before we go ahead and end.
Dima, anything from you?
Just a reminder that if you're on Instagram and want to join us for Q&A session this Friday, it's from 11 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, great reminder. The best application is a completed application, and you can't be selected if you don't hit submit. So don't be discouraged or think that your application isn't good enough, or kind of give up as we head up towards these last couple weeks. Do everything you can to finish up the application and submit it and put yourself in the pool. As Greg mentioned, there are all sorts of resources. You can go back and watch some webinars. He mentioned our video series. You go to the program's YouTube page. You can find all sorts of helpful short videos on different sections of the application. We've got the Instagram Q&As. You can email us at smart@smartscholarship.org. There are all sorts of ways to get help and insight if you happen to be stuck. But whatever you do, don't leave an incomplete application on the table. You can get there. And if you need some help, just reach out. Thanks a lot for joining us. Greg, thank you for moderating. Dima, thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise. And we really hope to see all of your names in the application pool come December 2nd. Take care, everyone.